Machine learning engineering for production refers to the tools, techniques, practical experiences that transform theoretical machine learning knowledge into a production-ready skill set. The machine learning engineering for production specialization covers how to conceptualize, build, and maintain integrated systems that continuously operate in production. Understanding machine learning and deep learning concepts is essential. But if you're looking to build an effective AI career, you need production engineering capabilities as well. Machine learning engineering for production combines the fundamental concepts of machine learning with functional expertise of machine software development and engineering roles to help you develop production ready skills. This webinar has been organized to discuss all these and many more issues related to machine learning in production. I am delighted to have the gracious presence of our today's resource person, Mr. Roshan Nair, Software Architect at Flipkart for today's session. Sir, it's an honor to welcome such a great personality on behalf of the organizing team of KMIT, who is doing an excellent job in his field. May I now request Mr. Sunil Kumar Tota to please walk through the profile of Mr. Roshan Nair. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Good morning.
Sorry, just before we move on, I would be like walking through a presentation, and I think I'm not allowed to share my screen at the moment. So if someone can look at that in the meantime, would be nice.
Yes, I'll give you the host. Yes, sir, I shall.
Sorry, thank you.
Good morning to the dignitaries and to the distinguished guest. Our guest, Mr. Roshan Nair, is currently working as software architect at Flipkart. Previously, he worked as a software development engineer at Flipkart. Before Flipkart, Mr. Roshan Nair has worked at Indix, where he built and deployed large-scale machine learning models. Built and deployed large-scale machine learning models for classification, attribute. Excuse me. Participants, please mute yourselves, sir. Before Flipkart, Mr. Roshan Nair has worked at Indix, where he built and deployed large-scale machine learning models for classification, attribute extraction, and matching of e-commerce products. His focus areas include building systems for machine learning, data mining, and fraud detection. Mr. Roshan Nair holds an MSc degree in Intelligent Systems from University of Sussex. Sir, we are very much privileged to have you as our today's speaker, sir. I welcome you on behalf of our college, management, our HODs, faculties, and student participants, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to you, Shirisha, madam. Hello, Shirisha, madam. Shirisha, madam. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, Sunil, sir. That's really a great profile. Without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Roshan Nair. Over to you, sir. The board is all yours. Thank you.
Hi. Sorry, I'll just request you. I'm having some trouble sharing my screen again. If you could just have a look at that. In the meantime, I can try. Okay, I think I'm sharing now. Yeah, perfect. Just to confirm, is my screen visible? Are you all able to see my slide, my presentation? Hello.
Yes, sir, we are able to see you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, when I'm on this chat, it's a little hard for me to see the chat. When I'm on this screen share, it's a little hard for me to see the chat. So let me get started right away then. Thank you all. First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me. Thank you very much for that kind and generous introduction. Um, I just wanted to perhaps give you a sense of what I do at Flipkart. Currently, I am a software architect at Flipkart, and I thought I'd just give you a sense of what I do here first. At Flipkart, I have worked on variously the data platform, the machine learning platform. These are systems to enable the rest of the organization to extract value out of the data that Flipkart has in its systems, and then use this data to build machine learning models and make sure that they get into production. So in the last few years, I have not done so much machine learning as much as building systems to enable others to do machine learning. Apart from this, in the most recent past, I have also worked with a very interesting area within Flipkart. It's called fraud monitoring and detection, where, as you can imagine, Flipkart has a large selection of products. It has a very large number of buyers, and also there are many sellers on the platform. So there is a lot of ways that people can fraud on the system. So it could be sellers who are trying to defraud users, or it could be some fraud somewhere in the logistics and supply chain of Flipkart itself. So we, in this team in fraud monitoring, we use behavioral pattern analytics to look at past behavior of users on the platform to identify whether they are displaying any fraudulent behavior in the present. I also look at Flipkart Commerce Cloud now, but we can talk about that later if we have time. So moving on, what I thought I would do is, show you the typical e-commerce shopping experience first. And I'd like you to just look at the screens and keep an eye out for the pages, and let me know at the end of this, we want to discuss, what is machine learning and what is software engineering in these pages. So if you can spot, look at these pages and spot which ones use machine learning, data mining techniques, do let me know. So let's look at this. So I'm on the home page. Obviously, I arrive at flipkart.com and I want to buy a shoe. I type in shoes into the search box. It takes me here to this page and shows me, this is what is called a search results page. It shows me a bunch of shoes on this page. When I scroll further down on that page, I'm also able to see similar products. I can see a lot of Nike shoes being recommended, one Campus shoe and one Reebok shoe. Okay, so I select a shoe, I go on, and I try to check out. When I check out, I come to the screen, I get to see the price of my shoe here, and it tells me that I can expect delivery in 2 days. Great. I want to pay for this now. So I move on. I look at the payment options. I say, okay, I do have a card registered, but I still want to use the UPI option. All right. And at the same time, on this checkout page, there's a little box on the right that says offers, right? And I can see a bunch of offers here. And there's one called 5% unlimited cashback on an Axis Bank credit card. But there's also an interesting one right below that says rupees 100 off on Flipkart Pay Later order. Okay, so that's interesting. So I continue to complete my purchase, and I guess at some point the shoe gets delivered to me. So I'll just pause for a moment here and raise a quick question for the audience. We walk through the home page, we walk through the search results page. We saw the product page where we saw similar products against, to the product that we were looking at. We saw the checkout page where my order was summarized and it told me when it would be delivered to me. We saw the payments page, not the payments page, but the payment section on the checkout page. We also saw the offers on that page. I just wanted to raise a question to the audience, and maybe you can enter this in your, let me try and do this. Let me just, I also think I've gone out of the presentation mode, so I will just fix that as well. So a quick question for the audience is maybe you can punch into your, you can punch into your chat box which of these pages used machine learning and data mining algorithms out of these homepage. So you can just type the number there against it. Okay, I'll just pause here. Thanks, guys. I see a lot. I mean, you can keep sending in your responses, but I'm going to give you the answer in a bit. I see a lot of people saying all. I also see some people calling out the search results page and the similar products on the product page. I see checkout page, payments, and offers. Okay, but I think the majority say all. Okay, that's nice to see. So it's I'm happy that it's a very informed audience here. Yes, the answer is all of these pages have some kind of machine learning or data mining algorithms powering them. So let's dive into this some more. Give me one moment, folks. I'm still having troubles with my presentation. Okay. Are you able to see the sidebar on my presentation? Okay, ignore that. I'll just proceed anyway. Let's not waste any more time. All right, so let's look at the homepage. When I land on the homepage, I have this big banner in between that tells me that there is a OnePlus TV and the sale is live. So a lot of these banners are ad driven, and ad serving on Flipkart uses a lot of machine learning. It is powered by machine learning algorithms largely and information retrieval algorithms that can do search. So this banner that you see on the homepage, there is machine learning running behind the scenes to display this banner. Let's come to the next one. When I type shoes here, this is on the search page. When I type shoes, there is a lot of machine learning that goes on behind the scenes to understand your query, to translate it into a query that can hit a database or a search engine or a search index before returning the search results. And as you can see in the results, there are two ads here. Okay, the first two products, the first two items are ads. Even these ads are being served using machine learning algorithms. When we go further below on the same page, when we open one of the product pages and scroll below, you will see the similar product recommendations. These are also powered by data mining algorithms that understand your likes on the system and recommend similar products to you. Alternatively, if they do not know much about the user's preferences, they might look at the product that is in the current context on the product page and find other products that are similar to the product itself. When we come to the order summary page, you can see this little note here that says delivery in 2 days. So what goes on behind the scenes here is something called delivery breach prediction. I cheated a bit over here. Actually, this does not happen at the time the order page is generated. It happens after you place your order. What actually happens here is once you place an order, behind the scenes, there are algorithms that try to determine whether there is any chance of this commitment to the customer of it being breached. And in that scenario, a whole bunch of alarm bells are triggered in the organization to try and sort out the problems before they actually occur. So this is again predictive in the sense that we are trying to predict whether this delivery deadline will be or commitment will be breached. Moving on to the payment options. At this point, we do a lot of fraud monitoring and fraud detection, whether it is on the type of order that you have placed or it is the type of payment you are doing. Even on the payment itself, the specific payment transaction, there is a lot of monitoring of those transactions to determine whether or not there is a fraudulent credit card being used, there is a fraudulent user making a transaction so that other users on the platform can stay safe. If you notice this, there was in the offer section a little piece called Flipkart Pay Later. Here, how do we know? How can we allow you to pay later? We need to be able to understand whether a customer has the ability to pay back, right? And this is where we use credit scoring algorithms or machine learning algorithms to come up with a credit score for a customer. And depending on the customer's credit score, different types of offers can be rolled out to the customer. So I'll just stop here for a moment. Let's revisit the use cases we saw. E-commerce, pretty much every page or every time you use any e-commerce system, there is bound to be machine learning and data mining powering some aspect of it. So we saw some of these use cases. We saw search, we saw the ad serving use case, recommendations use case. Now it's important to understand that different use cases use different types of machine learning. Different use case may not use machine learning, but they might use data mining techniques or optimization techniques for information retrieval, to identify similar products, to identify users who are similar to each other, for instance. So machine learning, many different types of machine learning, many different types of data mining algorithms, and lots of data that we need to process, analyze, and serve. So I'm going to take the rest of this session to walk you through a few use cases in depth. For instance, I will try to show you some of the machine learning that happens in the search system, some of the machine learning that happens in the fraud monitoring system, and some data mining techniques that we use. And I hope at the end of that, you get a sense of the different types of algorithms and use cases for machine learning, and how a little bit of a feel for how machine learning is done in industry. After that, I would like to walk you through the challenges we face in engineering these systems. In fact, we will just be scratching the surface even there, but I really just hope to give you a flavor of it in today's session. So let's get to the how. As I said, we will walk through a few examples of search and fraud detection. Let's look at search. What happens when you type a query like Nike on Flipkart? I'm just using Nike as an example. It could be anything. Do remember that the number of different search queries that humans can generate is infinite. But there are several patterns, obviously. And if you plot a frequency of search terms or a histogram of search terms, you will be, there are many that will be very popular. And then you have a very long tail of search terms that that are constantly, there are new ones arising all the time as well. They're not very common, but they are there. So let's look at this search term. This is still a very simplified case that I'm trying to present here, but I think it will be helpful to see how this works. So we have seen that I typed the term Nike, and obviously I'm expecting to see shoes, but it's not that simple. Nike products exist in shoes, obviously, and they exist in clothing, in the clothing category as well. But hey, what is this? I see that there are mobiles and accessories as well that have Nike shoes, that have some terms called Nike. So you can see over here that there are strangely some mobile accessories. Well, maybe not strangely. I guess customers want this, hence they order it. There are mobile accessories like cell phone covers that also include things like Nike in the title, right? So now how does the search system decide that when you type in Nike, that these shoes, Nike shoes, are what we should show you on top and first, right? Let's look at that. So what can I understand from this query Nike? Okay. Maybe let's look at the first thing I want to understand. Let's say, can I try and understand that Nike shoes, when I get this search term, that it largely belongs to the categories shoes and apparel. I would like a sort of a probabilistic score around this that tells me this is very likely to be shoes, but less likely to be apparel, and almost very low likelihood of it being a mobile accessory, related to a mobile accessory. Similarly, Nike, the mobile accessory, if you noticed, the word Nike is in the title, but it is not the brand of the mobile accessory. That mobile accessory has some other brand. So maybe I can extract that Nike is also a brand, and maybe those who are searching for Nike might prefer to see the brand Nike rather than a mobile accessory. What can I understand about the user? Can I tell whether the user is a male or a female? Can I say something about the age of the user? And if I can get all this information, I can maybe query the system better. For example, if I have this information, I can fire the query instead of just saying Nike. Sorry about that. Instead of simply requesting the search index for Nike, I can now say, show me the most relevant products where the category is equal to shoes, the brand is equal to Nike, the gender is male, and because the age bracket is 20 to 30, the type is sport shoe, not like formal shoes or any such thing. With all of this information, we will be able to return much more relevant results, search results. Okay, so let's see what we can do now. Let's look at store classification. Let's take one example. As I mentioned, I want to predict the category of the shoe. We are calling this problem statement store classification. Given a search term, the problem statement is given a search term. What are the categories that search term? What is the likelihood of those categories in the search term? So I need to assemble, let's see what data I have. So I do have data for the last 1 year in my system, where I have all the queries that users have fired for Nike. And then many of them went on to click some link or the other. So I can look at the links that they clicked after searching for Nike. And I collect all these data sets. So now I have Nike. I see there was a link, some link that the user had clicked. The category of that link is shoe. In this way, I keep collecting from the system logs. I keep collecting, and I prepare a data set from the data in the system from the last 1 year. Obviously, in this particular case, I expect that when someone is searching for Nike, the shoe category products will be clicked the most. So we would expect to have shoe, many records with shoe in this data set. With this second, this field called category of click product, this is known as the label. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with machine learning, but the problem statement in machine learning is given some examples of data and some labels against it, which means that this is what we are training. This is, if I know what happened in the past, the label is the what. The data is against the data, we want to answer the question what happened. So the label is what, right? So when the query came in, the category was shoe. So we choose that as a label, and we want in the future to predict when a query called Nike comes in, what is the label? So you can sort of treat this as f of x is equal to y, where y is the label, and x query is the input into that function. Let's take this particular scenario, and I want to train a multi-class classifier. If I will assume at this moment that I'll just very briefly talk about a multi-class classifier in case you are people in the audience are not familiar. It's very simple. A multi-class classifier is simply saying that unlike a two-class classifier or a binary classifier, we want to take the input X or Nike and predict one or multiple outcomes, multiple outputs, multiple labels. So here's an example. The W here stands for the weights or the parameters of a machine learning model. I'll just, but we need not dive into that right now. So a machine learning model might look like, when it is doing a prediction, might look like this function. Given a query Nike with some parameters or weights that we have estimated in the past, give me one or more labels and give me the probability of those labels. So I see shoes in this case, for instance, and the probability of it being shoes is 0.7. I see apparel, the probability is 0.25. And this is what I wish to predict. I will just pause here for a moment. I'm guessing most of your audios are off, but I just wanted to stop here and see, take at least one question just to sense the audience and see if you are following along with me up till now. So it's just a simple question at this point. Are you following along, or should I slow down or dive deeper, or is this, are you able to understand terms such as classifier, prediction, and so on? I'm guessing most of you would have done some machine learning or AI course. Okay, thank you. I'll just move on. So in this particular scenario, it's a multi-class classification problem. What types of models can we choose? We could treat this as an NLP problem, for instance, and do a lot of feature enrichment or feature extraction out of the search query. But I'll keep it simple for the moment, and assuming a simple problem setting where we want to take a query and predict the labels. Common models that we could use would be multi-class support vector machines or multi-class logistic regression. The general class of models over here, the class of algorithms over here, it falls under statistics or statistical machine learning. These techniques have been around. Logistic regression has been around for a very long time. SVNs, I believe, were invented in around the late 80s or early 90s. This class of models have come from the statistical, thinking around machine learning. So I'm sorry, I think I indicated there are going to be 3 slides, but this is it on the stored classification. So coming back to the problem statement, just a recap here, given the search term Nike, I can now build classifiers called stored classifiers that can extract the shoes, apparel. I can build brand classifiers. I can build on the user gender classifiers and age classifiers. And all of these I can use to then improve the relevance of my search. I'll just move forward and look at another example here. Okay, so look at my new, not Nikes, but Hikes. So here is a scenario where a seller on the platform has uploaded fake products. How do we go about solving for this? Can I detect that this shoe is not really a Nike? So the question now is, can we build a classifier to predict whether the product image is of a fake or a real brand? So we start by collecting product images of genuine brands, and we also collect product images of fakes that we have detected. And now we create a data set. So the first step obviously is we need a labeled data set. So we identify these images and label them as either fake or not fake. The question is, what kind of ML model should we use? So quick question for the audience. What kind of ML models that are you familiar with? Do you think that we can use in this setting where we want to take as input a product image and predict whether it is fake or not? Yes, I understand fraud detection and image classification, but that within image classification, what would be, would you use, could you use support vector machines? Would you use logistic regression, or would you use something else? Okay, nice. Okay, I see a lot of responses. So this is good. I'll move on. So let's look at what we do. Of course, there are many ways to solve this problem, but one of the most common models today to deal with images are deep learning models. These are neural networks. These are the type of neural networks. Just to differentiate neural networks from the support vector machines and logistic regressions, neural networks are biologically inspired. More recently, in the last 10, 15 years, we have seen neural networks really beat other machine learning techniques when it comes to benchmarks in image, text, in several areas of natural language processing as well. So let's look at this very quickly. We had an image data set, and we labeled this, right? I was a bit lazy. I'm just saying product image 1, product image 2. We labeled it as fake or not fake, and we used a deep learning model. We trained this model. During training, neural networks, so neural networks are assemblies of layers, with each layer interconnected with the next layer, and so on, till you have an output layer in which you have a prediction, you have the final prediction. These layers are connected through functions, activation functions that, basically they apply some function to the input from the previous stage to take it into the next layer. backpropagation is a technique that is used. Backpropagation allows us to use a type of optimization technique called gradient descent. It's a learning algorithm that looks at the error and tries to minimize the error. I won't go into it much more, but backpropagation essentially allows us to assign the error gradient, component of the error gradient to each of the layers. And as a result, we are able to solve this. Finally, when you want to infer, you run feed forward. That is, you pass the input at the first layer and you get the output at the final layer. In neural networks, in deep learning models, we have many layers of different types that can learn different representations or concepts. In this particular scenario, you would use convolutional layers. Hence, they're called, this class of algorithm is called convolutional neural nets. Okay, I wanted to actually also discuss a data mining problem statement here. What I will do, however, is in the interest of time, since we don't have much time, I will give you an overview of it. I have a lot of slides, an interesting problem statement that if we have some time after 10:45, if we can continue, we'll walk through that as well. But for now, I'll just skip that section because it will take us at least 10 minutes. So let's look at what is data mining. Data mining is different from machine learning. Machine learning is trying to solve the problem where, given a set of labeled inputs, can I train labeled data sets? Can I train a model that can in future predict, given an input without a label, can it now predict the label? In recommendation systems, for instance, we are trying to tell a user that if you, based on your browsing activity or your purchase activity, we think that you like, if you liked this product, we believe that you might like that product as well. Alternatively, we can also try to solve the problem as, all of these other users are also similar to you because they have similar order of browsing patterns. Hence, if the other users have purchased or liked certain items, they might be of interest to you as well. So these settings are called user to user or user to item. And the problem space is called collaborative filtering. Typically, these algorithms are run on very large amounts of data. We will go into that in a bit, into the type of, typical algorithms here for optimizing would include matrix factorization algorithms and other optimization algorithms. Nearest neighbors I wanted to discuss ahead in depth, and if we have time, we will come back in a bit. The other type of data mining algorithms are graph algorithms. We use this, the use cases for this would be to identify connections between users. As you can see, if there is one fraudulent user on the platform, there might be other fraudulent users who are working together in coordination. So it might be possible to identify fraud using connections between users. Similarly, I can also reward users for good behavior on the platform by giving their people associated with them better scores. Or I can recommend better products by building a user graph, a graph of all users in the system. Users could be connected by various aspects, by shopping behavior or various other aspects. So common use cases here are to identify, for instance, all nodes in a graph that are fully connected to each other, also known as connected components. So remember that we are doing this on very large amounts of data. So the actual implementation of these algorithms is also very critical. So label propagation is another kind of algorithm. We have 5 types of, we have a group of users, and there is some property about those users. Can we extend that there is a bunch of users who are connected to some degree. There is some property about those users that we know about. There are some other users also connected to these users. Can I predict that property about those users as well? So this is where label propagation techniques come in. So these are not traditional machine learning techniques, but data mining techniques, but equally important and useful. Though there is a big overlap in terms, in the sense that many of these algorithms will be used in combination with machine learning or optimization techniques. I will just skip through this at the moment, and we will return later if you have time. I wanted to now highlight the challenges. We saw that we can build models, and we do build models, and pretty much most big e-commerce websites you visit will have machine learning everywhere. What are the challenges? As we saw, first of all, we need to prepare large amounts of data sets. If I have to be able to do fraud prediction, I need to collect a data set of fake products and genuine products. This is extremely tedious. But let's not even get into that. Let's talk about something more close to us in terms of computation. Data, we have a lot of data. We collect all the data as much and record as much data as possible, because this is always going to be useful in the future for analytics as well as for machine learning. Without data, you can't do machine learning. So we invest a lot of time in collecting data, recording data as much as possible. Ingesting data, cleaning it, transforming it, analyzing it, extracting it is what we do with the data. So there are a lot of specialized systems and algorithms to deal with each of these independent phases, each of these phases. We need to run algorithms on this data for data mining, machine learning, graph analytics, as we saw. What can we do? How do we process this? This is not data lying on my laptop or on a single machine. How can I process this data? Most data will not fit on a single machine. So we have distributed file systems that are spread over several nodes, and each file is stored in chunks of smaller sizes. These are replicated because the underlying assumption is that commodity hardware will fail. So we have multiple copies of it. And we have metadata managers to look up files. So we have the names in this central name manager, file manager. And from this name, the path and the actual locations of each of these subchunks and the entire files are recorded there. And these are used to determine where and how to look up these files. They are also partitioned in this partition for easy reads or writes. Let's skip this. We can take this in questions if we have time. And the most popular, which you may have heard of, is known as the Hadoop distributed file system. Now let's look at how we extract data out of this, extract insights out of this data or run analytics on it. There's massively parallel computation on large amounts of data. We have terabytes and petabytes of data. Let's look at a simple example. We can no longer do algorithms the way we would do as if they were running on a single processor. So this brings us to MapReduce. MapReduce is a very common paradigm. We need to build algorithms that use this paradigm. Let's look at that paradigm. We want to count the number of words in a file. The first step would be for each word is the first step. In step one, we have something called the map phase. For each word in this file, we can emit a count. We can emit the number 1. So for each word, first of all, I take I parse the file so that there are words on every new line. For every word, I create a new record, word, comma 1. I then sort and shuffle this file. As a result, let's ignore the shuffle step, but I sort it and then distribute it across multiple machines, making sure that only sorted sections reach a particular machine. So each machine amongst a cluster of machines is getting a completely sorted file. As a result, if I have a word Nike, all words Nike are going to be on the same on a single file. And I then apply the reduce phase. In the reduce phase, it's a linear algorithm. As I walk through this, I simply add up the counts. And to arrive at, say, this particular word called Nike, the total number of counts in a file is 100. So I'm sure you may have heard of MapReduce. There are common technologies we use include Hadoop, Spark. Spark allows us to do it in memory. There are other technologies like Presto, Hive for various use cases, but the underlying paradigm is always MapReduce in all of these scenarios. I think it's 10:47 now. I'll just pause and just wanted to understand if I just pause here to see whether we should take questions now, or there was another section on data mining, and also there are a few more slides on additional challenges in doing machine learning itself. I'll leave it up to the audience here, maybe or Shailaja ma'am or someone, you can tell me if I should stop for questions, or should I continue with some more slides if we have time? Okay. Okay, so let's look at, I'll just come back here to data mining. So we saw this. We saw that there are different use cases and different classes of data mining algorithms, recommender systems. Data mining itself is a very vast term. So even information retrieval, such as search systems, you might call them data mining, I guess. Within that, you have recommender systems, nearest neighbors, and graph algorithms. Let's look at nearest neighbors. What are nearest neighbors? It's very simple. When I have I have a database of products, or I have a file with many product images. When I get a new image, or when my friend gives me an image and tells me, find me products that are similar to this product, I go into the database and I compare the images with the image my friend gave me, and I find the ones that are the most similar to the image that was given to me. So this problem statement of finding similar images, similar text, similar items, basically, it can be applied to any, it's a generic problem statement, is called, you can call it either nearest neighbors or similarity search. What are the use cases? As I mentioned, we can do reverse image search. This is when you go to Google, you upload an image, and Google tells you that these were the images I found that are similar to this. You can use it in e-commerce systems for catalog hygiene. What that means is when a user comes in, when a seller is uploading a product to the catalog, we can recommend to them that, hey, what you have uploaded, maybe you should sell it in this catalog. Because it seems to be a product that belongs to that catalog. We can use it for claims fraud, where if sometimes people are asked to send images of certain things, like when they claim that they have not received a product, or they have not received their food delivery, or they received something else in the food delivery, for instance, you could ask them to take a photo of that and send it, and then we can run a similarity search on that to see whether, for instance, these have already been sent in the past, right? Are they sending common images? So those are use cases. Let's look at how we can solve this and what are the problems actually. And I hope to just give you an introduction, obviously. So the problem statement, as we said, we want to cluster these, right? We want the mobiles to be mobiles to be together, and we want shoes to be together. And even within shoes, we want the most similar shoes to be together. So let's look at this. I want to find similar images to this shoe. And this is my database. So I have only these two products. For simplicity in my database, I should return the image on the left, that is a shoe, and not the mobile. I also want this search to return to score the similarity. So a score of 1 says that this is an identical match. A score of 0.912 says that they are extremely similar. 0.799 says pretty similar, but not as similar. So and obviously the mobile gets a very low rank score. So I want to be able to rank these by their similarity, relative similarity. So let's see how we can do that. What if we can take an image file, which is a bunch of bytes, and turn that into a vector, a special kind of vector? Let's say this vector has and as we know, vectors have the property that we can compute the distance between them. Can we say that the degree of similarity between two data points is the distance between the two vectors that we have generated from them? Once we think along these lines, then we need to find the next question is, how can I generate this vector given a product image? By default, I can't compare two product images and look at the distance between them, because there will be a lot of differences in two images that have nothing to do with the product in it, but it will have a lot to do with the quality of the image and so on. So let's look at, this is where machine learning comes in first. So one type of machine learning, one type of deep learning, also known as autoencoders or self-supervised learning, can take a set of inputs, and when trained, they can create a vector of bytes, and each byte in this is encoding some property about the input, the data point. We discussed earlier when we were talking about deep learning, convolutional neural networks have many layers, and each layer tends to learn some, or conceptually you can think of it as different layers are learning different concepts about the product. So now we can apply a similar, something similar, and instead of predicting, we can say, just tell me these values, give me a vector instead of predicting whether it is, instead of predicting whether shoe or not, just give me a vector for this. And now this vector, we can imagine, is somehow capturing those same concepts within this array of bytes. So the next question is, once I have generated these vectors for every image in my data set, how can I find all similar images by comparing their embeddings? So I will not use the term embedding in this discussion, just for simplicity, let's just call it vectors. Embeddings, you can read up about it, about the technique later. So the embedding here, when I say embedding, I mean that vector that we just discussed in the previous slide. So we want to find all similar images, and to do that, we need to compare their vectors. We have run the images through a machine learning model. I now need to find, for each data point in the data set, I need to compare it with the product that I've been requested to find similar products for, and get that score. Then after I've generated all these scores, I can sort and find the top scores, the top scoring images. Now when I have, sure, this seems straightforward, but now when I have millions of images, these vector similarity computations are also expensive, computationally expensive, individually at each instance, for each instance. But also when I'm looking at millions and millions of images, this is and I have to compare amongst them, I have an n-square problem. Or if I'm looking at comparing, so I have an n-square problem when I'm comparing all images to all other images within my data set. And I have an order of n problem when I have, someone requesting a reverse image search. They give me one image, and I need to compare it with all the images in my data set. But bear in mind, again, this is millions of images, and I can't wait. I'm not going to wait half an hour or 1 hour or a day for you to complete this problem. Moreover, I have many users to solve this problem for. How can we reduce this computational complexity? And this is where we have approximate techniques. We have approximate nearest neighbors. Approximate techniques mean that we don't want an exact solution, but the algorithm will ideally try to predict, try to give you similar values, and at the same time, it will try to tell you that this is probably right and within what bounds, right? So there's a 20% chance of error, for instance, or a 10% chance of error. So if I have these kinds of algorithms, while my answer might not be exact, but it meets my use case. Moreover, I cannot solve this problem without approximate algorithms because I just do not have the computational power to do this. Now, some of the algorithms that are used in this area are what are called locality-sensitive hashing, random projections. Essentially, they take a product, they take one input, and they generate many hashes for that input. So let's take we generated 50 hashes for that image above. They also have the property that they, unlike that, they will reduce the number of hashes that are generated, obviously. So over these 50 hashes, all products will get a subset of these hashes. So now I can tell that if two products overlapped in a very large number of hashes, then they are likely to be, so for instance, say they overlapped in 20 hashes, then they are likely to be more similar to each other than if it overlapped with another product in 10 hashes. That is the general idea behind how these algorithms work. There is a lot of tuning and verification that you need to do before they can meet your expectations. But thanks to such algorithms, we are able to do this within in a computationally feasible manner. So just to recap, I think we covered a lot of concepts here. So I'll stop right after this. But just to recap, when I want to find similar images, I can compute the vectors for all the data points and store them somewhere. I use machine learning models to do this, but deep learning models specifically for images. Second, just to recap, these vectors are trying to capture some concept about the data about the item. And the expectation is that because they're vectors, the distance between, we can compute the distance between any two vectors. There are different types of distance measures: Euclidean distance, cosine distance. Cosine is the angle between two vectors. Euclidean is the actual distance between them. And we can use this as a measure of the similarity between two vectors. As you can imagine, the same shoe will generate the same vector, so its similarity will be, its distance will be 0. The similarity will be 1 minus this distance. So the next step is to find the nearest neighbors for each embedding. Here we use approximate techniques such as locality sensitive hashing, random projections. It's a very vast space. There are many new techniques emerging constantly because this is a challenge that all big companies from Facebook, Google, Microsoft, everyone has these problems. So they're constantly innovating algorithms in this space. You If you want to read up more about this, you can use the term nearest neighbors or similarity search to get better understanding, or there is the textbook mining of massive data sets. We need not go into this. These are the same problem that when we do it, we can do it offline once a day or twice a day. And the other scenarios when we need to do this in real time, that is someone comes and requests for a particular image, we need to go and solve this problem immediately. Okay, I think I will stop here. I've taken up all of the extra 15 minutes, but I'm happy to take another 10-15 minutes in case there are questions, or another 10 minutes if there are any questions. Okay, so I will, I'm not sure if there are questions or not. It looks like there aren't. So what I will, I will, probably share, okay, someone. Okay, so I see one question: how many people work on a single ML problem? Okay, it depends again. I mean, if you're asking specifically in Flipkart, like it could be, you generally need a fair number of people. There are data scientists. Data scientists are specifically involved in formulating the problem statement and selecting the approach and the algorithms. They also tend to do a lot of literature review and survey to understand, keep themselves current with the latest in data science, as it is a very rapidly evolving space. To support them, you might have data engineers or machine learning engineers. So machine learning engineers actually solve the algorithmic parts. They actually build the algorithms and deploy them. Data engineers in some cases are required because, as I mentioned, the name of the game is data. There is just tons and tons of data. You need to keep it clean, which itself is a problem. So typical problem statement, a smaller problem statement might have, say, one data scientist, one or two engineers, could potentially solve smaller problems, if you're, especially when you already know what to solve. Other problems can involve many more, 10, 15 member teams, even bigger teams, depending on the size and the scope of the problem statement. I see another question here was, I'll just move on to, is there a fixed value for K? I think I missed out. I think there were two questions. Is there a fixed value for K, or how to find the K value in KNN? How to choose K value in KNN? Okay, in this particular scenario, as I mentioned, we are not, we want to determine K by how useful it is for us. For instance, I want to split my system into 3 different databases for scale. So I would choose, say, a K of 3, for instance, or 3 clusters, right? So it depends. The question, first part of it is fixed value. Yes, depending on what I want to solve, I might choose a fixed value. But how to find the right K value? I think there are many approaches that you can use for that, right? I mean, you could use self-supervised, like I think DB clustering comes to mind. K-means algorithms, you need to specify the K, obviously. In other scenarios, I think there are also techniques that help you explore the space, visualization techniques to get a sense. I don't think there's a single answer for that. I think you would have to explore the data, visualize, use different approaches to decide what K makes sense in your scenario. You could use automatic, like DB clustering will automatically, I think, hierarchically classify it. There are other types of clustering algorithms that will automatically determine the K for you. I see one more question here. What happens when the ID turns out to be 0.5, but the image is relevant? I mean, that's a fair question, but it is safe to say that there are two ways to look at this. One is, I guess you're asking if the algorithm itself is problematic, right? So then over time, we need to keep improving the algorithm. This is constantly, once you have built a machine learning algorithm and deployed it, there's constantly a monitoring of it because data is changing and patterns are changing over time. So we are constantly rolling out new models. We are constantly rolling out new versions where the error reduces. So just to be clear, right? I mean, all of these algorithms have errors, and the question is, how do we study the error rate or the correct accuracy of these algorithms and understand it well before we put it in production? And over time, we need to keep improving it. So I hope that answered your question when it comes to what happens when the score is 0.5, but the image is relevant. Do we lose that data? I did not understand this question. I'll move on to the rest. How do recommendations affect fraud or non-fraud users? Okay. Sure. So see, there are many different ways there are many different ways we address fraud. In Flipkart, for instance, I mean, you get sometimes cases like a customer has returned a product saying that, I did not get the product itself. So then we need to identify whether it is in the Flipkart supply chain, or maybe if there was a seller, a third-party seller, if the seller itself not shipped that product. So see, in such cases, first of all, there are system level checks. Like there are X-ray machines in several of these warehouses that can scan, but not all items also can go through an X-ray. So sometimes that doesn't happen. So there are these checks. There are other checks such as if this has happened multiple times and we are seeing this fraudulent behavior from the seller, there's a lot of patterns and data from which we can actually tell that there is some fraud of some kind happening. So there are two things we can do. One is when we are not entirely sure, like when I have my model tells me that possibly it's fraud, but it's about 0.7 or 0.8 likelihood, right? In that case, we might go and investigate the seller. We might tell a team internally to go and investigate the seller. In cases where we are 100% confident, then we might ban the seller, or even in really extreme cases, then there are legal means, etc., that have to be followed. I hope I answered that question. What is the role of data analysts in these types of problems? Yes, so the kind of problems I covered are not so much analyst problems today. I try to focus on the computational aspects of it, on the algorithmic, and generally to cover the space. Data analysts tend to, they tend to look at the data, write queries on it, and come up with the business insights around it, typically. So and then after the business insights, they might come up with how to solve for these business insights in the future. So generally, they are working with some amount of statistical techniques, perhaps, but generally, the largest amount of work is with SQL and data, whether it is on big data systems or in smaller systems, local systems. The second thing they do is prepare these insights. That is very important for them. And in that process, third thing they do is say forecast, right? They might also forecast in some cases. So they might generally they will use some amount of statistical techniques in this scenario, but generally they will not have these scale problems. So whenever there are scale problems, data analysts don't generally do the engineering. We have software engineers who work on that. Someone asked, is it okay to choose data science as a career? I mean, yes, obviously it's okay. I won't blame you. But no, I'm guessing you want to know how is it as a career? It's a very solid career right now. There's a lot of learning. You need to keep up with the space. I would advise that you would typically need to do a master's to get into data science, into the bigger companies. And even then, a PhD is almost like to really be at a very good level. A PhD would be useful, but at least a master's is generally what I've seen. And yes, data science careers, people do very well. Money-wise, it's very well. Work-wise, also, I can imagine it's very satisfying. I'll just skip to. Yeah, so someone asked the question generically about maybe, I think Flipkart, they probably had some problem on Flipkart or Amazon. Yeah, I see. It's a very big organization. We have like hundreds of millions of products and customers in most of these big e-commerce firms. So it is a problem. I think they are trying to address it, but every now and then, sometimes it goes through. How will the use of ML increase in the field? It is just going to increase. I mean, we are just scratching the surface of machine learning use these days. It will start to get applied more and more. The problem is, and we did not see so much in the challenges, but the problem is in the systems to do machine learning are very different from regular software engineering systems. Everyone is aware of a database, but to put one machine learning model out there, you have to build, a lot of systems to make it happen. So when these systems start to fall in place, they become like standard systems. Say, for instance, everyone is aware of databases today. When machine learning systems become standard systems, we will, and that will happen in the next 5-10 years. Do we need relevant experience? Well, not for at entry level. Generally, say companies like Flipkart or Amazon for machine learning roles, if you have a bachelor's or master's degree, but if you're doing some internship or have subjects or some little bit of, have taken subjects in the space, in the field, then they would consider you at the entry level. Obviously, in later phases, you need the relevant experience. Are there any data sets that work independently, or do all the data work? I did not quite follow this question about data sets that work independently, or does the data work together? Can you clarify this question, and then maybe I can address it. Do you prefer? You need to come. I mean, complete your. Are you planning? I hope you're not planning to drop out to do Kaggle. I hope that's not what your question is asking. I mean, you should be doing, if you're interested in data science, then yeah, Kaggle is one way to keep that interest going, while you can you can solve these problems side by side, right? There are some people though who have made careers out of, they become like top rankers on Kaggle, and they were able to build a career around that. Oh, there are plenty. There's a question about, is it okay to work here or abroad if you choose MLS career? There are plenty of options in India to do machine learning. That choice is entirely yours. Obviously, we are not, there is cutting edge research also happening in universities as well as in certain companies in India. Obviously, the best, you should look at where the best, if you really want the best universities and best companies, then I mean, you can do that research yourself. That they might be in India or abroad, or they might be both in India and abroad, right? You have like all the companies here these days. How do companies hire data scientists or data analysts? Mostly freshers. Like more companies hire people based on competitive coding algorithms. We don't require it. Please talk on this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not been in data analytics hiring, so I can't really say that. I think about data scientists, I already covered. I'm a little familiar with that, though I'm not a data scientist myself, but I'm a little familiar with that, so I was able to talk about it. About data analysts, I'm not aware. So I would assume that you take some analytics courses, or you understand SQL, or you get hired and get trained. search in websites, is it ML based or web development? No, it's search is basically a search index. It's an inverted index. It's an inverted index for each token in your query. There is an entry in the inverted index, and the set of documents in which that entry exists is linked to that entry in the index. And then a bunch of things happen around that, and of course, it's a lot of other stuff on top of that. But you should look up inverted indexes and posting lists or search indexes, right? That is how search is implemented. On top of that, to improve the relevance, a lot of machine learning is actually used. Actually, in Flipkart, at least, search and is heavily is a very heavy machine learning based system. Any websites for data science projects, you could try Kaggle, right? That's very popular. I think there's Analytics Vidya and all in India. How do Flipkart ensure customers' privacy from data breaches? I will leave that to, of course, there are security teams in Flipkart. I'm not entirely, I mean, on behalf of Flipkart, I could speak and generally say that, yes, there are a lot of checks and balances and audit trails that are happening. But more specifically, I won't be able to answer. What's your role at Flipkart? We talked about this earlier. I work as a software architect at Flipkart. That's basically to build and design the systems for a particular team, like one or more teams. Okay, is the user credit score user parameter for displaying search results as well? User credit score could be used for a lot of different things. Every time, once we have developed it, every time we build something new, right? Like a new offering for sellers or even for users, we are able to then decide whether to use this in that scenario, right? So we are able to, once we build machine learning models, we're able to use them in different scenarios. Use them in different settings. So in this particular scenario, I'm not sure about search results. I doubt it though. Data science online, you can use, I think a lot of courses on Coursera might be helpful, useful. There are beginner level to advanced level courses there. I think we are also out of questions. I think, I hope this was helpful to you all. I found it a bit tricky to balance the right level of, being of deep dive versus of going in depth versus, helping you understand. I was not sure how much of background you already have, but I hope you at least got some understanding of how many different types of applications there are of machine learning in Flipkart and other e-commerce companies in general. I hope you found it useful. That's it from me. Yeah. I will take your leave then, and maybe I will.
Thank you.
I'll just
so
hand it over to Sorry.
Yes.
Go on.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was extremely informative. Actually, you have taken a real-time example so that we could follow what you were saying. And above all, it was very valuable session. Thank you so much to you for a wonderful session. And to you, dear audience, thank you for being lovely audience. I just request you all to fill the feedback form, which has been posted by Sandeep, sir.